What's up, people? This is the Believe in Saints podcast presented by FanDuel. I am Mario Jerez, Spanish play-by-play voice of the Saints, native New Orleanian. She is my co-host, Erin Summers, seasoned reporter and analyst covering the Saints and the NFL. Erin, since we've started doing the show together, you've been pretty nomadic. I know you got a lot going on. I know you're traveling again this weekend. Where are you, first of all, and how you doing this morning?
And so technically I'm in St. Pete, the Tampa area. I am covering the American Conference's football media days. So they're today and tomorrow. Have a big show tomorrow morning covering all of the teams and stuff. So I'm excited about covering some college football. It's been a minute and it's going to be fun to get back in that world a little bit. So yes,
Man.
I'm in another hotel room.
Okay, man, that area of Florida, I know St. Pete and Tampa, kind of two different cities, although they neighbor each other, but you
Mhm,
got SEC media days going on in one place and you got
mhm.
the American going on. There's going to be a lot of journalists in that area. I guess a good
Yeah.
opportunity for you to socialize and whatnot.
Yeah. If I have time, we'll see.
If you have time. Shout out to everybody at the American Conference Kickoff, including Erin. Check her out. You want to give yourself a little plug, let the people know who you're going to be hosting with and at what time.
Yeah, the show starts at 7:50 Eastern time. It's a little bit early for all of the Tulane fans, potentially. They're in the New Orleans area, and it will last until 2 o'clock Eastern. It's going to be on ESPN Plus. So we're going to have tons of coverage. Every single coach is going to get interviewed and two players from every school. So definitely tune in if you have time. Just fire it up on your computer while you're at work, some good background.
All right.
And then hit our podcast.
Yes, good suggestion. Busy weekend for Erin, but it starts right here on Believe in Saints. And we got plenty to chop it up about here today. We'll talk about some positions of interest going into training camp. Not necessarily position battles, Erin, but some positions, some certain players that I'm keeping an eye on as the Saints start their training camp sessions next week. We'll also talk a little bit of Drew Brees as the future, soon to be present Hall of Famer is on a little press tour right now, doing a lot of different interviews. He's saying some interesting things. Of course, we're going to talk about that. And we'll check in on our friends across the NFC South. We'll get an odds update from our friends at FanDuel and see how the sports books are feeling about the Saints, the Falcons, the Buccaneers, and the Carolina Panthers. So, like we said, plenty to talk about here today. Finally making it to training camp next week, Erin. And it's been a really
Mhm.
interesting offseason, right? The Saints were very aggressive early on in free agency, made some key additions. Then we had some contract drama, if you want to call it that, with Cameron Jordan, with Alvin Kamara. That's continuing a little bit to an extent with Chris Olave. But my point is, I'm excited to get back out there and watch practice. I know we went to
Yeah.
OTAs before, but this is a little bit more intense. And that's the point of training camp, right? You don't want to go too hard. You don't want to be fatigued going into the season or anything like that. But you do want to simulate the physicality, the heat, which is specific to this area, and it's kind of the final run before we get to actual preseason games and games. So I'm excited for training camp.
Yeah, I am too. And I feel like we talk about this so much. It's going to be so good just to actually see all the players on the field, to see what head coach Kellen Moore is going to do differently in year two, because there were a lot of, I don't want to say negative comments on how he ran practice because it was short and quick, and I didn't mind getting out of the heat. But people definitely shared some opinions on the way that he ran practice, how short the practices were. They did get a lot in a short amount of time. They were very efficient, and that's was a point of emphasis because he didn't want them to be out there as much in the heat. But I think that we're going to see maybe a little bit longer practices, probably see a little more intensity in terms of how often they scrimmage. We saw one full practice last year that was a full scrimmage. And I felt like they got a lot out of that because while they were just playing each other, I think that running through it in live time really helps. And then, of course, we're going to see even more of that high level competition in practice when they have the joint practices. And there's going to be 3 of those. So there's going to be a lot of opportunity for this team to take steps forward. And I'm just interested to see how things are going to be structured for one from Coach Moore.
You said some people. I'm curious if you were one of those people because you were out there, obviously last year's training camp, and I think that bled into the regular season a little bit with Kellen Moore. You know, like you said, no
Yeah.
disrespect, but at times you could tell he was definitely a first time NFL head coach, time management and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And that's a good point. We talk so much about which players we're looking at. We talk so much about Tyler Shuck and him being so much more comfortable now, knowing he's the starting quarterback, being a little bit entrenched in the NFL. I guess you could say the same thing about Kellen Moore. I'd expect them to look a little
Yeah.
bit more comfortable. And I'm curious to see, like you said, kind of the pace of the practice to see how hard he will go compared to this time last year.
I think they spent so much time during OTAs and obviously coming off of year one, making sure everything was installed, that they're going to hit the ground running when it comes to training camp. A lot of these players are going to be familiar with what's being asked of them. Sure, there are some new pieces, but a lot of the new players were here for all of OTAs. So they're going to be pretty much up to speed once you get into training camp, that I think things should run very smooth in that regard. But we're looking at the slow starts that we saw last year in almost every single game. How do you start practices? Is there things that you can do in practice to make sure that you're not dragging in the beginning, calling people out if there are mistakes, execution, the level that you're bringing at all times? So there are things that I'm sure are going to be talked about and focused, emphasized on. We'll hear it from the players. We'll hear it from Coach Moore. We'll be able to tell based on what we saw last year. And it was just different in general because it was the first time we've seen a different head coach here in a long time that's not in the
Mhm.
same tree. So we were so used to the same flow for training camp for so long. And then when Coach Moore came in, we're like, that was an hour and 15 minutes. Like, we're done. I mean, okay, like if that's what you guys want to do, like I'm all for it. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
And I like the training camps here, you know, when Sean Payton was the
Mhm.
coach, and I think once with DA, they went out to LA or something like that. I like that they're keeping it in New Orleans, and it's going to be so fan friendly this year, not just with, you know, them letting the fans attend to practice, which is customary, but so much like added coverage, Aaron. It's so obvious we're
Mhm.
in the year 2026. Like it's crazy all the ways people break down and now even consume practice. So it's going to be fun. And I see a lot of complaints, you know, some from fans, some people doing what we do, you know, oh, why are you talking so much about practice? It's because the people eat it up. The people love having that kind of access. And these are important days. You know, the Saints are not just forming a roster. We're going to talk about position battles, but forming a culture, forming an identity as a
Mhm.
team. And if the Saints are going to have a good season, Aaron, if we're sitting there as NFC South champions in a few months, I think we're going to cite lots of moments from the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, double digit open practices, including one at Tulane. It's going to be a great opportunity for the fans to get their eyes on what the Saints are doing, the new pieces. I'm sure they're excited about seeing people like Travis Achan out there running around and Jordyn Tyson. And I think it's going to be beneficial for the community to be able to be out there as much as possible because the momentum is there. People are excited. I think the players feed off of that. They like having the fans there cheering for them in a positive way and yelling and being excited. So I think that it's going to really be good in terms of like just the atmosphere and what it does for both sides to continue to create that the feeling, the hype going into the season.
I'm excited for those joint practices, man. The Saints have had
Mhm.
several over the years, but I don't remember too many on airline drive before that preseason opponent. And I'm
Yeah.
definitely going to get out there when they open practice against the
Yeah. Been
Jaguars.
a
That should be fun.
while.
Yeah, it has been a minute. So
Yeah.
that's going to be fun.
I know.
Probably more fun
I'm
than the
really
actual
excited.
preseason game, right? Like it's going to be more
Mhm.
intense than the
Yeah.
actual preseason game. So that'll be a lot of fun. And some of these position battles, like we said, will be fun. And if you look across the roster, Aaron, I feel really good about the Saints, like starting players, really at most positions. It seems like they kind of have a plan as a team. They're starting to build an identity, but the depth is still really lacking at a lot of places. One position where the Saints do have a lot of bodies, though, is wide receiver. And the top three, honestly, I feel pretty good about. You and I had that conversation about Olave's play style, Jordyn Tyson's play style, it being kind of
Mhm.
similar. But with your top three of Chris Olave, Jordyn Tyson, Devaughn Vele, if those three guys are healthy, I feel like the Saints are going to have a pretty good passing attack. after them is where things get really interesting because you invested heavily in the draft, but you have obviously some young and unproven guys. And then you have people on the roster like Ronnie Bell, Bub Means, Kevin Austin, who have made plays in NFL games. Like, not only do they have experience, but they've actually made some plays for the Saints. So just a lot of tough decisions at wide receiver. I feel like you got Jalen Polk, Trey Palmer, the three rookies that you drafted, plus Mason Tipton, Kevin Austin, Bub Means, all fighting for maybe like 2 or 3 spots max. So I'm excited about the top 3, but I think the competition factor in training camp is going to be really, really fun to watch amongst the rest of these guys.
With the wide receivers, you have 13 on the roster right now. You mentioned the top 3 being Chris Olave, Devaughn Vele, Jordyn Tyson for sure. Then you have Bryce Lance, Barry Brown that you took in the draft, Brock Rechtsteiner, who people are really excited about during OTAs, and Jalen Polk. I think he right now is somebody that is on the roster. But that doesn't leave you a lot of other options. Trey Palmer, where does he land? Bub Means, are they still going to hold on to him despite his injury history? Is Barry Brown going to take Mason Tipton's role? And is there a need for Mason Tipton anymore? You've kept Kevin Austin Jr. the last couple of years on the practice squad, Damian Alford, Ronnie Bell. So those are all the 13. And there's going to be maybe 6 spots that are going to be divvied out. And there's really probably only 1 or 2 that are open for potential players to slide into.
Those are going to be some tough cuts, man. And I hate to speculate on stuff like this, but Jalen Polk, I feel like, still has plenty to prove. I know we've talked about him a lot this offseason because he's such a potential bargain for the Saints, somebody who was such a high draft pick, who you gave up so little to get. And now you're hoping gives you that same production
Mhm.
that he had in college. But there's just so many guys here, and I feel like so much potential. I think Kendre Miller is in that conversation too. Maybe somebody who could be a tough cut, but realistically, just because of all the bodies, somebody that can be kind of a training camp casualty. So those conversations are tough, obviously, and we're talking about these guys' livelihoods, but that's always another really fascinating part about this time of year, Aaron, seeing these guys that so many people kind of ballyhooed, hyped up over the offseason, ending up not even making the
Mhm.
team. Like that inevitably is going to happen.
Yeah, I think to your point, the third running back, we know who the first 2 are, but who is going to be the solid number 3? Is it going to be Kendre Miller? Is it going to be Devin Neal? Is it going to be Audric Estime? That's something that you're going to see. I mean, depth in a lot of these different areas is something to watch. I will throw one out there that people haven't really talked a lot about, and I will say the quarterback depth, the the backup quarterback competition. Because Tyler Shuck is the guy, absolutely, yes. And I guess you want to give the nod to Spencer Rattler because he was in
I
the
would.
system last year.
Yeah.
But is this Zach Wilson's like redemption story? Is he going to be one of those guys that finally finds a home and does better? I mean, he was a second overall pick. So people thought that the potential was there. It just stunk it up with the Jets, was on the practice squad with the Broncos, went to Miami, only played in 4 games, didn't do much there last year. His track record's not good in the NFL, but
No.
it's going to be interesting to watch and see if maybe this is where he hits his stride and he has got more experience than Spencer does, and he's able to usurp Spencer potentially.
Yeah, I'm happy you brought that up, Aaron, because all that is fine and good and valid, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think Spencer Rattler is a good quarterback. Had some bad misfortune last year, but I think despite his win-loss record, we say on the show all the time, wins and losses, not a quarterback stat. I thought he did some really good stuff last year. And when it comes to Zach Wilson, he'll have every chance to prove me wrong. He looked honestly a little lost during OTAs. Like his first pass was a pick six. That's something that stood out to me, but now he's a little bit more comfortable in the system. It'll be a little bit more quarterback friendly, I think, these drills now with him being further along, and he'll get his chance. But honestly, I think Spencer Rattler's a better player. And I think Spencer Rattler, despite getting benched, is coming in with a little bit more confidence than Zach Wilson because of what you mentioned, the expectations. And I was having this talk with a young person earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Young person didn't understand how a quarterback, not necessarily Zach, but any quarterback could be so good in college. We were talking about Justin Fields, can be so good in college, but not as good in the NFL. And I told him that for a quarterback
Mm.
specifically, when your confidence is shot, it's just really, really hard to get it back. We don't see too many examples like Sam Darnold, who's the ultimate outlier of what we're talking about here. But to kind of summarize what I'm saying here, I think Rattler played well last season. He's coming in with more confidence. Wilson's trying to resurrect his career, but I would put if FanDuel had like a
Mhm.
betting favorite for the Saints backup quarterback spot, I would say it's Spence.
That's fair. And I think that that's where a lot of people are assuming this ends up because he already has the experience in the system. And he did improve over the year, although didn't translate as far as wins losses goes. He's 1-13 as a starter, but we have seen improvement and he clearly has the athletic ability as well. Okay, so we talked wide receiver, quarterback, a little bit running back. Anywhere else that you're looking at following during training camp?
Yeah, middle linebacker's a spot I think where I don't know if there's a position battle like
Okay.
Pete Werner's the veteran guy. He's been the starter there 6 years, but it's clear that they really want Stutsman to get involved. Like towards the end of last season, the Saints
Mhm.
really wanted him to be a fixture in their defense, and I'm really curious to see what happens there. Who takes over the Mike linebacker spot? Like I said, I think it will be Pete Werner. But you brought in Kaden Elliss to kind of replace Demario Davis as the leader, but obviously he's playing
Mhm.
on the weak side, so he's not going to be really having the pre-snap responsibilities. But still want to see how he looks, flying around training camp when they ramp up the intensity a little bit because he's an important player. Not going to replace Mario Davis him by himself, but collectively it's going to have to be a thing. But as far as position battles, I'm definitely watching the snap counts at middle linebacker when it comes to Pete Werner and Danny Stutsman because Danny Stutsman might force the Saints to give him a bigger role this year.
Yeah, so Stutzman last year, and I was just reading this article, Ross Jackson did a great job about this, breaking down the tackle rates from Stutzman and comparing them to what Demario Davis did. So Stutzman had 204 snaps last year, 53 tackles. So his tackle rate was 26%. 26% of the time he was involved in a tackle, which is extremely high because you look at Demario Davis last year, 1,024 snaps, 143 tackles that led the team. His tackle rate was 13.3%. Now, he was on the field a lot more. And as things happen on the field, the more snaps you get, I mean, you're not going to get as much production as Stutzman did. So I think that if you can multiply what Stutzman was able to do in terms of the snaps, and he can still be pretty productive, maybe as productive as Demario was, and continue to keep that rate around a 13%, then yeah, I think he is going to be maybe pushing people's hands as far as giving him some more opportunities because he certainly likes to get out there and hit. And he is a very impactful. We saw it on special teams. And then he got more run on the defensive side and as a linebacker as the season went on.
Yeah, it's a crazy stat with the 25%. That's basically a quarter of all snaps. Like that guy can really fly around. If he gets his fundamentals down, I think he's definitely
Yeah.
the future at that position. And if he plays really well, you got Jalen Ford behind him. Does Pete Werner become a trade candidate? I mean, that's something you could definitely follow going forward. And another position, I don't know how much of a
Yeah.
battle you consider this, but they've been bringing in so many guys to push Charlie Smyth. They brought Mason Shipley in, the undrafted rookie out of
Mhm.
Texas. And now Tanner Brown is there providing some competition. And it reminds me of back in the day when you'd get these really good arena league kickers and they'd bring them up to the NFL. Tanner Brown was a superstar in the UFL and he made multiple 60-yard field goals, really accurate from 50 plus, but multiple 60 plus yard field goals with his team in the UFL. So I don't know how much of that competition will really be visible. I don't know if this is something that's going to bleed over into preseason until it actually becomes a competition. But Charlie Smith's the guy right now, Aaron, but it's definitely not set in stone. Like they are really either trying to find his replacement or really trying to push him so that he kicks better.
Mhm. I think that it's funny because you think about a training camp battle, and Blake Groupie absolutely killed it when he was out there was going into last season. And had only one missed kick the entire time, the entire training camp. And it was when it started raining a little bit. Like everybody was like, oh, Blake Grupe's got this in the bag. He's fine. No, I have to worry about him. And then he just got the yips. I don't know what happened. He just completely plummeted once the season started. And you got to do it when it matters. Like you got to deliver in the games. So, yes, we can dissect everything that happens in training camp, but that is an example of you having to do it in the game. And once we get there, whether it's Charlie, whether it's Tanner, like hopefully consistency is key, right? So, hopefully, we have a consistent kicker.
Man, Blake Grupe was a nice guy. I know Saints fans were kind of upset with some of his comments. I always had positive interactions with him. Good dude. But if I can, since he's no longer on the
Mm-hmm.
Saints, funny story. One time I was, in the Superdome. It was, I don't remember if it was before or after a game, but a security guard was getting ready to go tell Blake Grupe that he can't be down here because he thought he was just a fan or a student or something, I guess. And somebody had to come over before he got to Grupe to tell him no, he plays for the Saints. So that was really close to being an awkward moment. But that's kind of my lasting image of Blake Grupe on the Saints.
That poor guy dealt with that multiple times to start the year.
Really?
And it was a little bit of a joke and he let it slide. But I mean, it was awkward interviewing him because I was so much taller than him. I looked like a giant compared to him, and it made me uncomfortable. So I understand the security guards questioning, um, him being out there in street clothes and whether he should be or not. But it's all about torque and what you can do when you kick it. So he got that. I don't know how. He has a lot of power, but he figured it out.
Yes. And since we're on this topic, Aaron, we're about to check in on the NFC South odds, or the most recent ones. At the time of this recording, there actually aren't NFC South
Mhm.
odds on FanDuel, but these are the most recent ones. And when I think of Kellen Moore, right, he just had his first season as Saints head coach. He has not won a game yet against the Falcons, which is awful. We've had to hear that about that all off season. But he is undefeated against the Carolina Panthers, 500 against Tampa Bay for what it's worth, but hasn't lost to the Panthers yet. And I know Tyler Shuck talked about his favorite moments on a podcast recently. For me, my favorite moment last year, kind of the transcendent moment of the Saints 2025 season, was the home game against the Panthers because
Mm.
the Saints were down. They weren't doing very much offensively. But Tyler Shuck and Charlie Smyth, in my opinion, kind of willed the Saints to victory in that game. And it meant a little bit more because you remember who Dennis Allen's last game as Saints head coach was against, right? Same team, Carolina Panthers. So for me,
Yes,
it was like
yes.
Dennis Allen had a big lead in that game, blew it, and then was fired. Kellen Moore and Shuck kind of had to come from behind, and Olave gets the touchdown on J.C. Horn. Charlie Smyth nails a game winner as time expires. Like that was an awesome moment. And as the Saints try to take the next step in 2026, I think if they do take the next step, that's going to be looked at as kind of an identity forming win, like something that springboard them into this season. So yeah, that was my favorite moment.
Yeah. I think that this division always is so fascinating because no one ever knows who's going to come out on top. And you usually pick because of the quarterback. But I think a lot of people are starting to get on that Saints bandwagon. They're starting to think that the Saints could put something together. Atlanta, I keep hearing Atlanta a little bit more than I have because of the pieces they have on that team outside of the quarterback. But again, that is a huge position, and you got to figure out whether it's going to be Michael Penix Jr. or Tua Tagovailoa. If I even said that right, I kind of like slurred at the end, but you know who I'm talking about.
Tua.
And we'll see who's at the helm and who takes them to whatever position they end up in the NFC South. But I don't have a lot of faith in the Falcons, and I'm totally fine saying that because we are Believe in Saints podcast, and the Falcons are always going to get some shade if we can find a way to do it.
Yeah.
So, yes, whatever happens in the NFC South, I think it's going to be between the Panthers, the Bucks, the Saints, and the Falcons are going to be on the outside looking in.
Yeah, Falcons fans wouldn't tell you that because they would say, oh, 2-0 against the Saints and stuff like that last season. But I think they're actually kind of similar teams, Aaron.
Mhm.
But I'll give the advantage to the Saints because I feel much better about the quarterback situation, like you just mentioned. And for what it's
Yeah,
worth, that
absolutely.
as of now, the Bucks are still the betting favorite, but not by much. They're at plus 200 to win the division, so right at 2-1. The Saints are a little behind them at plus 240, and then there's a rift creating. Like the Saints and the Bucks are starting to appear to be kind of the trendy picks to even compete for the division because the Falcons longer than 3-1. They're at plus 310 odds to win the division, and then the Panthers are at plus 330, which is wild. Like I'm not saying they should be the betting favorites, but for the Saints, even as somebody who wants the Saints to succeed and for the Panthers to not succeed, objectively, that's too big of a
Mhm.
rift. The Saints should not be plus 240 to win the division, while the Panthers are at plus 330. So I guess the sports books are just really eating up some Kellen Moore and Tyler Shupp. But the narrative, Aaron, right now, as we get to training camp, appears to be just based on the analysis that I see and based on these odds that I'm looking at in front of my face that the Bucks and the Saints are the two teams to beat in this division.
Yeah, well, we will see how it plays out. I just can't wait for training camp to start so we can start seeing how some of the other teams are looking and what's coming out of their camp. I know the Panthers have already had a couple injuries that have popped up. They started camp yesterday. So that's always tough. And that's when things are going to start to change is if there are injuries that happen that affect the team to start the season, which could put them in a hole as the season goes on.
Yep. We'll be following along with the Saints, obviously, but definitely keep an eye on that Tua Tagovailoa, Michael Penix battle, and everything else that's happening in the NFC South. So the Saints will report to training camp next week. They still have one more week off, and a lot of the dialogue this week, Aaron, amongst Saints fans hasn't been with the current Saints. It's been about Drew Brees, who is about to be inducted into the NFL Hall of Fame. He's having a little press tour right now, and I got to say, I'm really enjoying
Hmm.
this, Aaron. Not just hearing the stories because I've heard them a million times. You know, his injury in San Diego, Sean Payton bringing the team together inside of the Superdome before that Monday Night Football game, showing him the Spike Lee documentary and stuff like that. But it's just nice to see an athlete of Drew Brees' caliber, you know, first ballot Hall of Famer, kind of give the city of New Orleans so much love. You know, there are other teams in New Orleans that are not considered, you know, a destination for people to go. The Saints
Hmm.
were that with Drew Brees, and they're trying to get back to that standard now because of what him, Sean Payton, and those teams did. So it's nice to see somebody like that give so much love to this city, you know, which historically, objectively, hasn't had the most success in sports and isn't looked at as like a destination for free agents to go. But here's one of you know the top five best quarterbacks to ever play the game, just gushing about the city. So the stories are fun to hear, but I'm really enjoying Drew Brees talking about how much he loves New Orleans, and you know he's genuine about it.
Yeah, it's great that this time right now, the Saints are going to get a light shined on the city, the New Orleans city, and the team, the organization, because of what Drew Brees was able to do here, because of him going into the Hall of Fame here pretty soon. And it's really good that it aligns with a season where the Saints potentially are going to be better than they have been in a little while. Because if you have more eyes on you, more people paying attention, you want to be able to deliver. So the timing could not be better right now for this team because a couple years ago, things it would have been rough. And people were like, oh, I'm going to go check out the Saints and see what they're up to because, yeah, this guy Drew Brees just went to the Hall of Fame. And I remember when they won the Super Bowl and blah, 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 blah. Whew, so I'm glad it's this year.
Yes. 20th anniversary of the post Katrina Saints, the Gleason block, and all that. So maybe that'll hold some significance as well. Aaron, I know you got a busy weekend ahead of you. I really enjoyed the show. Do you have any final thoughts before we sign off and get ready for training camp next week?
I just got to say, shout out to Drew Brees because he is coaching at the school that I went to in is the San Diego area at Santa Fe Christian. So, you know, keep helping out though over there and bringing those guys along.
Shout out to Santa Fe Christian. Shout out to Erin as well. Always enjoy doing the
Mhm.
show with her. Go check out our friends at Katie's. Don't forget, if you're looking for some true New Orleans food, you know, Katie's is a must stop. pizza, sandwiches, salads, really good po' boys, whatever kind of po' boys you want to get. They got it. If you want to eat, that's your place to go. And if you just want to watch a game with your buddies, that's a great spot to get to as well. Beautiful patio area. Great timing right now with the fall weather. So go check out Chef Scotty and our friends at Katie's Restaurant. Thank you for listening. And don't forget to hit subscribe, leave a 5-star rating, and write a review. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. For Erin Summers, I'm Mario Jerez saying thank you for watching. Thank you for listening to Believe in Saints. We'll talk to y'all next week for training camp. Looking forward to it. Y'all take care. Who dat?